Have you ever seen someone so quiet, so invisible, that you never stopped to wonder what pain they were hiding? That's what happened to Ethan Cole. A self-made millionaire who thought he had everything. Until one rainy afternoon, he saw something that changed his life forever. A woman, his maid, sitting alone in the pouring rain, clutching a small lunchbox, crying while eating as if that meal was her last. He could have ignored her. He almost did. But what Ethan discovered next would break his heart and remind him what true wealth really means. Stay till the end, because this story might just change how you see the people around you. Ethan Cole was the kind of man people envied. Owner of multiple companies, luxury cars in his garage, and a glass mansion overlooking the city. But behind that success, Ethan was tired. Every morning, he'd wake up in silence. No family, no laughter. Just the hum of his coffee machine echoing through marble walls. His mansion was spotless, thanks to Maria, his housemaid. A woman in her mid-40s, quiet, respectful, always early, always smiling politely. She never talked much, just did her job and disappeared into the background. Ethan barely noticed her. To him, she was part of the routine, like furniture that cleaned itself. But that changed one rainy afternoon. The sky was gray, thunder rolling in the distance. Ethan had just finished a business call when he looked outside through his window. There, near the gate, sitting on the curb in the pouring rain, was Maria. Her uniform soaked. Her hands trembling as she opened a small metal lunchbox. Inside were just 2 slices of bread and a boiled potato. She ate slowly, shielding her food from the rain, tears mixing with raindrops on her face. Ethan frowned. Why is she eating outside? He thought maybe she'd had an argument or was waiting for someone. But the sight lingered in his mind like a weight. When she came back in later, drenched and shivering, Ethan finally asked, Maria, why were you eating out there? You could have used the kitchen. Maria froze, her eyes wide, as if she'd been caught doing something wrong. Oh, I'm sorry, sir, I didn't want to disturb you. You had guests earlier, and I didn't want anyone to see me. Her voice cracked mid-sentence. Ethan wanted to ask more, but something in her trembling voice made him stop. That night, he couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about her sitting alone in the rain. He thought of his own mother. A nurse who worked long hours so he could go to school. She, too, used to skip meals so her son could eat. The next morning, when Maria came in, Ethan greeted her. For the first time in months. With a warm, "Good morning." She smiled faintly, surprised, and went about her chores. But that day, he noticed something strange. When Maria thought no one was looking, she wrapped up leftovers from the kitchen and hid them inside her bag. Curiosity got the better of him. Ethan quietly followed her after work. It was still raining. She walked nearly 2 miles down the main road, her shoes soaked, clutching that same bag. Finally, she turned into a narrow alley. And that's where Ethan saw it. A small, broken shelter made of cardboard and old tarpaulin. Inside, 2 children. A boy and a girl, barely 10. Waiting with eyes full of hope. Maria smiled through her tears and handed them the food she had saved from his mansion. The kids hugged her tightly, whispering, "Mama, you're home." Ethan froze. The world seemed to stop for a moment. That night, Ethan sat in his car for a long time, watching the little family through the rain-streaked window. He felt something deep inside. A mix of guilt, sadness, and admiration. Here he was, a millionaire, throwing away food without thought. And his maid, who earned less than what he spent on coffee each week, was feeding her children with the leftovers from his home. The next morning, he called Maria into his study. "Maria," he began softly, "why didn't you ever tell me you had children? That you live there?" Her hands shook as she clutched her apron. "I didn't want to lose my job, sir. People don't like hiring mothers who bring their problems to work. I only wanted to provide for them quietly." Ethan nodded slowly. "How long have you been living like that?" "Almost 3 years," she whispered. "After my husband passed in an accident, I couldn't afford rent. The shelter was all I could manage." But tears welled in her eyes, but she quickly wiped them away. "I'm sorry, sir. I'll find another job if this makes you uncomfortable." Ethan stood up and said, firmly but gently, Maria, you're not losing your job. You're getting a new house. She looked up in disbelief. He smiled. A real smile, the first in a long time. I've already made arrangements. Your kids will go to school. You'll have a proper home, not a shelter. Maria broke down, falling to her knees in tears. No, sir, please, I can't accept. Ethan stopped her. You've already given me more than you know. You reminded me what kindness looks like. Over the next few days, Ethan moved Maria and her children into one of his smaller properties. He enrolled her kids in a nearby school, arranged for medical care, and even promoted Maria to manage household staff. Every evening, they'd share dinner together. Not as employer and maid, but as people who understood pain and gratitude. And for the first time, Ethan felt peace in his home. The empty silence that used to echo through his mansion was now filled with laughter and warmth. Months later, when it rained again, Ethan found Maria standing by the window, watching the downpour with tears of joy. He walked up beside her and said quietly, "You used to cry in the rain, Maria. Now, I hope you dance in it." She smiled. "Because of you, sir, my children no longer fear the rain." Ethan looked out at the storm and whispered, "No, Maria. Because of you. I learned that wealth means nothing if your heart is poor. Sometimes, the people who seem invisible carry the biggest hearts. We walk past them every day. The janitor, the maid, the old man sweeping the street. Not realizing they're fighting silent battles. But when you choose compassion over indifference, you become richer than any millionaire. Because true wealth isn't in what you have. It's in what you give."